So, but an interesting note is that the Giants, who were at one time linked to Shedeur Sanders, and not really just Shedeur, right? Deion too. Like there was a whole week-long discussion if the Giants, there was like a plan to bring in basically all of Colorado to New York. But then the Giants were not interested in Shedeur, that they were possibly trading the pick. And then now they're going to keep the pick and blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to keep it simple instead of sifting through the bullshit. I want to know, Bert,
Yeah.
should your New York Football Giants draft Shedeur Sanders?
Well, for me, no. I just don't understand why. To me, Giants management is all over the place right now, and it seems as though that they don't really know what the fuck they're doing, and it's annoying the shit out of me because I don't understand how Schoen can go from we're going to take the best position available in the draft to fast forward a month and a half to have the type of meetings and workouts with Shedeur Sanders to make it seem as though it's a clear-cut pick at 6. Not to mention, over the past 6 weeks or 8 weeks, really, you've signed 3 quarterbacks. You know, you re-signed DeVito for a year with, I mean, that's chump change, but then you get Jameis. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, maybe they are going to try to draft a QB high. Could be Shedeur. And I would have been fine with that if it was just a Jameis situation and then bring in a rookie, learn for a little bit, put him in, see what he does. That's fine. But then you go ahead and you sign Russ, not even a week and a half after you already signed Jameis. So obviously you've created a situation from a quarterback standpoint where you're going to have 2 individuals compete for a job, although Russ, by contract, seems to be the heavy favorite because what did he get? 23 or 24 overall with 21 guaranteed for 1 year. Mm-hmm. And now to be working out Shedeur and make it seem as though that he is a lock, if he's still there at your pick to take him. As a fan, when you're looking at the front office and these decisions, I'm all for rookies sitting to learn and not pushing them right out. Give them space, right? We've talked about it time and time again. But why go out there and create this competitive uncertainty with your quarterbacks to begin with just to bring someone else into the fold who could potentially compete for a starting spot? And if that's the case, what do you do with all the money you just spent that's sitting on your bench? To me, it honestly just doesn't make sense. And I think there are other gaps that they need to fill too. But at the end of the day, it's obviously not my call. I mean, you listen to anybody else, this could be good for the Giants in the long run, but that's all good and well if Shedeur transitions into an NFL quarterback, which for me, from the tape I've watched, yeah, that's great. He did fine in Colorado, I guess good enough to be in the Ring of Honor after a 500 record, but I'm not 100% sold. And I think it just goes to the hot and cold nature of like rookie talent coming into the NFL. Unless you are generational, and we've only seen so many, 9 times out of 10, they end up just completely flopping.
Dwayne Marcus, what's your read on this Shedeur Sanders thing? Should the Giants draft him? If not, what's the best spot for him?
Well, I think there's 2 different things, right? There's the perspective that Bert brought up, which is you sign Jameis, you re-sign Tommy DeVito, you bring in Russ. Should I bring in a rookie who is very polarizing, who should probably be a day 1 starter, even if he's not ready to be, considering the current state of the New York Football Giants as it relates to just it's been lackluster without Eli Manning. It was lackluster the last couple of years, even with Eli Manning, as far as quarterback is concerned, right? In that regard, the answer is no, just because there's too many bodies in the quarterback room. But if you take a look at just the top 12 quarterback prospects that would be coming out next year, and this is no disrespect to any of these gentlemen, but you've got Jackson Arnold, Haynes King, Carson Beck, Miller Moss, John Mateer, Sam Levitt, Cade Klubnik, Lenore Sellers is in here. Drew Aller is in here. Arch Manning is in here. And the rumor mill is saying Arch might not even declare for the NFL draft next year. Like, whether you love Shedeur, whether you don't like Shedeur, he's better than all those guys, except for Arch, if Arch comes out. I don't think – and now what I mean by that is I think personally I would take Shedeur Sanders over Arch Manning. I think many people, especially people who don't like Shedeur, would find any reason not to take Shedeur, including the fact that Arch's last name is Manning, right? When we look from that perspective, the reality of the situation is this: whether it's Russell Wilson, whether it's Jameis Winston, whether it's for some godforsaken reason it's Tommy DeVito, the Giants are probably going to be picking high in the draft next year as well. Are they going to be in a position to take a quarterback next year? Yeah. Is any potential quarterback they could take in the top 5 next year better than Shedeur Sanders? In my opinion, no. And so in that regard, you do have to take Shedeur Sanders, despite how confusing this quarterback room is. I guess my question is, knowing that you have to take Shedeur Sanders because he is the best quarterback in this draft, in my opinion. Obviously, Cam Ward's going to go number 1 overall. But then the question becomes what Bert asked. Why are we picking up Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson if Shedeur Sanders is the obvious choice, right? So here's where I'm at. What I think the Giants believe is what I've always believed, which is that in order for a rookie quarterback to be successful, unless they are undeniably generational, is you just have to build around them. And you have to use high quality draft picks on quality skill position players. And I think maybe the Giants have realized that. And I don't want to give the Giants too much credit here because they're a garbage organization.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But maybe Bert, there's some silver lining here. Maybe Bert, after watching Saquon Barkley, letting him walk out the front door and watching him win the Super Bowl, maybe some sense has finally descended upon the Meadowlands in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And maybe that's where we're at right now. And so I think when you look at it from that perspective, maybe the Giants want to draft other skill position players, and maybe they want to draft a quarterback in the future once they've gotten all these other people around them to just be get some skin in the game. But they should draft Shedeur Sanders. They're not going to find a better quarterback unless the Messiah is declaring for the draft next year. They're not going to find a better quarterback than Shedeur, not just on the field. They're not going to find a better guy as a rookie who can come in and manage what is going to be a very hostile media environment in New York very early on. And whether you like Shedeur or you don't, you have to acknowledge the fact that there's not many quarterbacks that have been through as many adverse situations who understands how to handle the media as much as he has. It's a very loaded situation. I think you can see a reason to draft him. I think you can see a reason not to draft him. I think the question just becomes, how stupid do the Giants want to look after the first round, whether they do or they don't draft him? People are going to hate it one way or another for sure, though.
So as soon as Joe Schoen, the general manager of the Giants, said that he wouldn't force the team into drafting a quarterback, which I'm a big believer in. Like, if you're in a situation like this year where the draft class for quarterback isn't really that cut and dry, right? Like there isn't much outside of 3, maybe 4 guys and then probably just 2 that you were kind of confident in. And really there's just one that you're really confident in, and that's Cam Ward. And we all kind of assume he's just going to go number 1 to the Tennessee Titans. But after that, it's kind of whatever your style is that you like. You got some GM saying one guy runs like Lamar Jackson and the other guy is the most accurate person he's ever seen. And this other guy has IQ, but he's like raw, rough around the edges. Who knows, right? So if you're the Giants, to me, I don't believe in just drafting a quarterback simply because you need one. That's why bridge quarterbacks exist. There will always be veterans that can hold you down for a year or 2. So don't do anything if you're not in love with the guy, then don't do it. Like, plain and simple. So, and again, I'm basing this just off of Joe Schoen's comments about not forcing the team to draft a quarterback. And it sounded an awful lot like he was loading up. Hey, you fans out there, Bert, get ready for Russell Wilson to start for us in 2025.
Yeah.
I got to imagine the Giants have done more than enough work on this quarterback class to believe that they'll probably take one in the draft, one that they don't have to like start, right? You draft Shedeur or somebody with this 3rd pick, almost assuredly you're going to have to start this guy, or else why even pick him? So if it's me, the decision for me is simple. You take the player that the Browns leave on the table. If the Browns draft Carter, you draft Hunter, and vice versa. To me, it's a no-brainer. And if I'm the Giants, I'd rather have Abdul Carter. We've seen these last couple Super Bowl runs, defense, man. Like the guys that really make a difference. These edge rushers, and Bert, that's one of those magical positions that I say that you pay for, right? That you go above and beyond for. Yes, quarterback is one of them, but the quarterback, I don't think any of these quarterbacks are going to be, when you talk about the top 5 and you're drafting a quarterback, I'm assuming you're going to be in the top third of the league. Like, that's what I'm expecting on my return on investment. I don't see any of these guys doing that, period. Even that, and that includes Cam Ward. Like, I just don't see, honestly, I don't see a franchise quarterback in this draft. And honestly, everything's a dart toss. You know, I don't see a 10-year starter. I really don't. I see a couple guys. I see a lot of Geno Smiths. I don't see a lot of Josh Allens. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I see average to or serviceable to good starters. You know, maybe some consistency, but I don't see a guy that is like, yep, if as long as I got him and a decent defense, I can compete for a Super Bowl. I just don't. And again, I could be wrong. Most drafts, we talk about all these players and like only 3 of them are good and the rest of them suck. Like, that's usually how it goes in any draft. But in this one specifically, like, I just don't, there's not a guy that somebody can talk me into confidently saying, yeah, this guy is the next franchise guy that we're going to see for the next several years. I got fooled by Anthony Richardson. I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to let it happen to me again. So that's just me. Dwayne Marcus, you thought it looked like you had something to say.
Well,
there.
I mean, the problem is, for starters, you've got the same franchises picking these guys every single year. Like, this is, I'm surprised with all this talk about Cam Ward being picked first by Tennessee that no one's mentioned the fact, or not many people have acknowledged the fact that this is going to be the 3rd year in a row. The Tennessee Titans have spent a draft pick on their quarterbacks. And it's not because these guys are necessarily bad. It's because the Tennessee Titans don't know what they're doing, right? Malik Willis, I think, could have been a capable starter in this league. They would have built around him properly. Will Levis had, a generational run of just very bad decisions to start off the season last season, right? And that might just be indicative of him just not being good at football at this level. But I also don't think, though, that if the Titans would have decided, let's spend some time and invest some resources into that those things could have been fixed, right? And so when you look at this draft class, you're talking about the top 5 quarterbacks in whatever order you want. We're looking at Cam, Shedeur, you're looking at a Kyle McCord, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe. Like, all of these guys, I think, are more than capable of being 10+ year starters. I think the issue that we have with the NFL is, for starters, there are so many of these franchises who are drafting guys to be day one starters when they're not prepared to have a rookie be a day one starter, right? How many teams over the past, 5, 7, 10 years have actually been prepared for their rookie quarterback to be a day one starter? Not they're the day one starter because that's the only option, but like, genuinely, the roster is a roster you look at and you say, we could survive with our quarterback being a day one starter and being able to figure some things out, right? The Commanders, I think, caught lightning in the bottle last season, because if you would have told me at the beginning of the year that they would have been prepared to have a rookie be their day one starter, no matter who it was, I don't think that they would have had the success they had leading into it, but they did, right? Not many teams are in that position. So when I look at the New York Giants, when I look at the Tennessee Titans, the Cleveland Browns, these are not teams that are prepared for their rookie to be a day one starter, right? They're going to have a rookie as a day one starter, assuming that the Browns pick a quarterback, but that might not be what's best for them. I think we need to get back to the time in the early 2000s and early 2010s when rookie quarterbacks sat for a couple years, because that's when we saw quarterbacks turn into 10+ year starters more frequently, right? We think back to the Commanders, they drafted RG3 and Kirk Cousins in the same draft. Like, that happened. And it worked out for them, because when RG3 went down with his knee injury, Kirk Cousins came in and he was a starter for a bit before he ended up going to Minnesota, where he was a starter there as well. Like, I think not knowing if these quarterbacks are going to be day one starters is more an indictment of the way that these franchises have been run over the last 10 or so years than it is on the quarterback talent themselves. So I think all of the quarterbacks, that at least the top 5 that can be drafted in the right situation, 100%, I could see them starting for 10+ years if they're drafted in the right situation and given the time to kind of improve on the things that they might need to improve on before they're ready to assume the role and be the guy for the franchise.
So basically, everything that benefited Jalen Hurts, you just have the perfect situation and then you can be good. Otherwise, you're trash. I mean, it doesn't
have to be perfect, but you know what I mean? But I also think, I'll put it this way. I'm a big fan of Jalen Milroe. I think it's irresponsible, though, to think that Jalen Milroe can show up week 1 of the 2025 NFL season and start. I think that's irresponsible. I think there's
Well, if you listen to some of these scouts, they're talking about he's a better runner than Lamar Jackson. I couldn't.
Well, he's not a better runner than Lamar. I mean, I got some slack for comparing. I got a lot of heat on TikTok for comparing him to Jalen Hurts, and I won't back down from that. I mean, they're very similar in a lot of ways. I won't get into tonight. But like again, Jalen Hurts sat for a majority of his rookie season, and then look at where he is now. Right, Lamar Jackson sat for a majority of his rookie season. Look at where he is now. Like of the guys that we look at and we say are the elite of the elite in the NFL right now, how many of them started week one? Patrick Mahomes sat his entire rookie season. Yeah. I think Josh Allen started.
Josh Allen. He didn't. He started because
he didn't start week one.
No, he started a few games in because Kevin Kolb got not Kevin Kolb.
Right. And he's
Tyrod Taylor
look at him and he's one. Justin Herbert, he started week one, but he started week one because a doctor in LA got silly with a needle. If not for that, he wouldn't have been a day one starter.
Yeah.
Right. Jordan Love wasn't a day one starter. CJ Stroud was a day one starter by circumstance. Right. I can go on like a lot of the guys that we look at and we love and we say these are the guys. A large chunk of them did not start their first start was not week one of their rookie season. And that wasn't the case. And we've seen, Joe Burrow is an exception because Cincinnati was just god awful. Right. But for the most part, the guys in that upper echelon, in that top 10, even if you want to extend to the top 15, were not day one starters. And so I think the NFL knows that that's the model. It's just none of these organizations are patient. Like they just want to win right away. And I think that's the problem.
Well, that goes to what Mayor Chris Walker is saying. The top three teams of the draft are probably the worst run franchises in the last 5 years, and that none of the teams have the coaching staff to develop talent. So, yeah, you keep bringing out these guys and you don't have the coaches to develop them. It throws a hindrance. And then you have a situation like the Browns, right, for example, who had Joe Flacco not too long ago and we're making a run to the AFC title game. So, like, if it's not the coaching problem, you have an issue with ownership giving quarterbacks $230 million guaranteed and hamstringing the coaching staff from being able to sign or get players to develop. So, yeah, like when you and again, when you're at the top of the draft, unless there's like some trade that happened 7 years ago that somehow magically lands, you know what I mean? Like, like then, outside of those are like outliers, right? But like generally you're a bad team. And so it's unfortunate for some of the younger players because you are trying to catch lightning in a bottle. Yes, the draft generally is a crapshoot, right? Like these players, we tout them and all we can go by is college. Tim Tebow, probably the greatest college quarterback anybody's ever seen, couldn't make it in the NFL. And he's been with great franchises. You know what I mean? He won a playoff game. Like it's just so we don't know. And yes. Yeah. And it's just, to me, it's just a mixture of everything. So I don't want to sit there and say that a guy can or can't do it. I just, based on traditional scouting and what we see from players, I just don't see it from anyone. But hey, again, there's Brock Purdy was the last pick in the draft and he's about to get paid, and he's been very successful in the NFL. So we'll see. Also said they benefited from coaching staff that helped them develop. Yep, exactly. So moving off of it'll be interesting. The draft is in a few days, right? 2 more days.
On Thursday.
It's on Thursday, so I'm sure next week we'll talk about it.